Imagine standing in front of a mirror and realizing that everything you see, your strengths, your doubts, your insecurities, is not the reflection of what others think of you, but the pure measure of how deeply you trust yourself. The journey to self-trust begins with this simple truth. Most people search for validation outside themselves, but the truly powerful look within. They understand that confidence comes not from others, but from a deep relationship with their own judgment. This wisdom echoes through centuries. Machiavelli, the Italian philosopher, recognized this when he wrote about power and virtue. He saw that true strength comes not from position or title, but from inner conviction. The leaders who survived difficult times were not those who avoided mistakes, but those who relied on their own judgment even when the world turned against them. Why is self-trust so rare? Because it demands facing an uncomfortable truth. No amount of likes, praise, or approval can fill the void of internal uncertainty. From childhood, people learn to seek gold stars and applause. They grow into adults who mistake conformity for wisdom and silence for strength. The person who truly trusts themselves walks a different path. They understand that self-trust is not about feeling certain all the time. It is the quiet knowledge that even if they fail, they will rebuild. It is not the absence of doubt, but the refusal to be ruled by it. Consider how many times a person knows exactly what to do but hesitates, not because they lack knowledge, but because they fear judgment. They measure their worth by how others see them, their achievements, status, and image, rather than by how faithfully they follow their inner voice. Those with genuine self-trust do something remarkable. They stop waiting for perfect conditions before taking action. They recognize that certainty comes through action, not before it. Self-trust is not a feeling to discover, but a discipline to practice daily. Machiavelli would say that fortune, life's unpredictable force, favors those prepared to seize opportunity. This preparation happens inside. It means training the mind to face resistance and stand in personal truth even when unpopular. It requires developing the courage to act despite trembling hands and racing thoughts. The person with self-trust stops seeking the perfect moment and instead becomes the moment. They listen to their intuition without asking permission. They remember the freedom that comes when their heart whispers, "This is who I am," and they believe it completely. Yet self-trust does not mean rigidity. Machiavelli warned that inflexibility leads to ruin because life constantly changes. True self-trust allows a person to adapt without losing their center, to learn without abandoning their conviction. The greatest leaders stand firm yet remain flexible, changing strategy but never surrendering self-command. The first revelation on this journey is simple but profound. Self-trust is not a belief, but a relationship built through experience, discipline, and honesty. It is the quiet knowing that no matter what happens, a person will not betray themselves. Most people think self-trust means believing everything will work out well, but that is merely optimism. True self-trust runs deeper. It means knowing that even when things go terribly wrong, a path forward exists. This confidence comes not from wishful thinking, but from surviving previous challenges. What happens when a person faces their greatest test? When plans collapse, when silence grows heavier than words, when chaos whispers they are powerless. This moment reveals the true measure of self-trust. Will they crumble under pressure or rise with a strength they never knew they possessed? There comes a moment in every person's life when everything seems to fall apart. Plans crumble, certainty fades, and the future becomes unclear. It is in this moment that the true measure of self-trust reveals itself. Machiavelli observed that fortune, the unpredictable force governing events, resembles a wild river. No one can stop it from flooding, but they can build channels to guide its flow. This means people cannot control what happens to them, but they can control how they respond. Many believe self-trust means feeling confident that everything will turn out well. This is not strength, but merely optimism. True self-trust means knowing that even if things go terribly wrong, a person will find a way forward. It is not blind faith, but earned confidence born from surviving previous challenges. Those who deeply trust themselves are not untouched by pain. They simply refuse to let pain define them. They carry the wisdom of their scars without being limited by them. They face failure without denial, standing in the ashes of disappointment and saying, "I can rebuild." History shows this pattern clearly. Leonardo da Vinci spent years sketching machines no one believed possible. Galileo defended his understanding of the cosmos against powerful opposition. Both lived in a world that punished independent thinking. Yet centuries later, we call them geniuses. Why? Because they remained faithful to something within themselves that no external authority could silence. Many people silence their own genius to make others comfortable. They feel an inner knowing, a creative impulse, an intuition, yet bury it under logic. fear, or the need to fit in. This is what Machiavelli meant when he spoke about the danger of fortune. Not just external challenges, but the internal storms that make people betray their own voice. Those who truly trust themselves develop a powerful discipline. They refuse to abandon their inner compass even when it points toward uncertainty. They don't wait for agreement before acting. They don't seek validation before expressing their beliefs. They move forward, even trembling, because they understand that self-trust builds only through the act of trusting. This creates one of life's great paradoxes. People cannot gain self-trust by waiting to feel ready. They must leap first, and only in mid-air will they realize their wings were always there. Yet this inner strength remains rare because it requires something most people avoid: solitude. After being exiled from political life, Machiavelli spent long hours in silence, reflecting and writing. He created The Prince not from a position of power but from a small village, stripped of status. In that solitude, he forged ideas that would echo through centuries. When the noise of the world fades, people finally hear their own voice clearly. Solitude is where self-trust begins, where performance ends and listening starts. Yet solitude terrifies many because without others' opinions, they must face the truth about themselves. They must see their fears, contradictions, and weaknesses. Only by confronting these shadows do people discover that weaknesses do not define them. The person who truly trusts themselves has learned to balance two forces: emotion and reason. Emotion provides passion, purpose, and fire. Reason offers direction, structure, and control. Together, they create what Machiavelli called virtue, that magnetic force of presence that bends circumstances to will. This force appears in anyone who faces adversity with calm authority. It shows in the person who loses everything yet stands tall, in the artist who creates despite rejection, in the individual who follows their calling despite criticism. These people remain unshaken not because life treats them kindly, but because they have learned their worth is not negotiable. But what happens when this inner strength meets its greatest challenge? When the world demands proof, not of what a person knows, but of who they truly are? There comes a time when the world demands that people prove not what they know, but who they are. In that moment, they discover that self-trust is not built in comfort. It is forged in conflict. Machiavelli understood that every individual, whether ruler or thinker, would one day face forces greater than themselves. Fortune, he said, is unpredictable. She rewards the prepared but punishes the complacent. Those who survive her challenges are not those who try to control her, but those who have learned to control themselves. To truly trust oneself means stopping the attempt to predict life and starting to adapt to it. This is where resilience becomes the silent heart of self-trust, and where most people fail. They confuse resilience with mere endurance. Endurance is surviving. Resilience is transforming. Think of a tree in a storm. Rigid branches snap under pressure, but flexible ones bend and return stronger. This is how people who trust themselves operate. They bend with life, but never break. They feel pain but don't let pain dictate their future. They learn from every fall, and because of this, fortune can never truly defeat them. Machiavelli often wrote that fortune controls half of our lives, but the other half is governed by our virtue, our capacity to shape, to choose, to act. This means that even when life seems unfair, there is always half of destiny still in human hands. That half is will, discipline, and resilience. What gives birth to resilience? It begins when a person stops asking why me, and starts asking what can this teach me. That simple shift turns suffering into wisdom, fear into awareness, and loss into power. When Machiavelli observed the fall of great rulers, he noticed a pattern. Those who relied solely on fortune, luck, connections, circumstances were destroyed when it turned against them. But those who relied on virtue, on inner strength, rebuilt even after ruin. They had something the world could not take from them: self-command. When life hits hard, some people collapse, while others calculate. Some surrender to emotion, while others pause, breathe, and respond with clarity. That moment of pause is where power lives. In that moment, they shift from reaction to creation, from victim to strategist. Those who truly trust themselves are not emotionless. They are emotionally intelligent. They know their fears but refuse to bow to them. They know their doubts but act despite them. They treat every obstacle not as punishment, but as proof of their strength. Machiavelli believed that life would always test those who seek mastery. That's why he warned against dependence on fortune or favor, because both are temporary. What endures is what is built within. This is why the most powerful trait of those who truly trust themselves is not arrogance, but inner sovereignty, the ability to remain the ruler of their own mind no matter what happens outside. Inner sovereignty means a person's peace cannot be purchased and their confidence cannot be stolen. Their value no longer fluctuates with success or failure. They are no longer enslaved by outcomes, whether life gives or takes. They remain the same. This is not detachment. It is power in its purest form. The ancient Stoic philosophers called it ataraxia, tranquility of the soul amidst chaos. Machiavelli saw it as virtue, mastery of self. In both, the essence is the same, freedom through discipline. But this freedom comes at a cost. People must give up the illusion that control means safety. They must accept that uncertainty is not their enemy, but their greatest teacher. When they stop fighting uncertainty, they start flowing with life. They stop being prisoners of what if and start acting from what is. Every visionary throughout history reached greatness not by avoiding fear, but by dancing with it. They understood that fear is not a wall but a compass. It points directly toward what must be confronted to grow. But what happens when someone finally stops running from this compass and instead follows where it leads? What happens when a person trusts themselves completely? They begin to move differently. They speak with clarity. They stop seeking validation because their compass is internal. They stop apologizing for existing as they are. And paradoxically, that is when the world begins to trust them too. People instinctively sense when someone is anchored in authenticity. Machiavelli wrote that people follow the one who appears most certain of their path. But what he truly meant was deeper. They follow those who have conquered their own inner uncertainty, because the one who leads himself can lead the world. This can be made practical when facing doubt. Instead of asking for reassurance, a person can close their eyes, breathe deeply, and ask, if I trusted myself completely, what would I do right now? The first instinctive answer is usually the truth before fear distorts it. That voice, quiet, calm, and certain, is inner authority. The more a person listens to it, the stronger it grows. With time, the need for external approval fades. The person acts with clarity even when others misunderstand them. Setbacks lose their power to shake them, because when someone trusts themselves, even failure becomes fuel. As Machiavelli said, it is not titles that honor men, but men who honor titles. In other words, worth is not granted by status, applause, or validation. It is defined by the integrity with which a person lives their truth. Self-trust is not an end, but a practice, a daily decision to believe that one can face whatever comes. It is the courage to rise again, to speak truth, to walk a unique path even when the crowd walks away. Those who develop this inner sovereignty share certain qualities. They no longer fight against life but navigate it skillfully. They develop a rare calm, the calm of someone who no longer battles circumstances but flows with them. This makes them magnetic and compelling. People sense that nothing external can move them too far from their center. This is the presence of a mind that has learned to rule itself. Machiavelli leaves us with this revelation. The most powerful trait of those who truly trust themselves is self-governance, not dominance over others, but command over their own impulses, emotions, and fears. Because when people govern themselves, no one else can govern them. Think about what that means in daily life. How often do people give their peace away to circumstances they cannot control? How many times do they allow others' opinions to dictate their mood, decisions, or sense of worth? Every time they do, they surrender a piece of their sovereignty. But the moment they realize that no external judgment can define their inner truth, they reclaim that power. They stop chasing control and begin cultivating stability. They stop reacting to life and begin responding to it. They become, as Machiavelli might put it, the ruler of their inner kingdom. This does not mean life becomes easy. On the contrary, it means finally stopping the expectation that it should be. People stop waiting for certainty before acting. They stop expecting guarantees before taking risks, and that acceptance, paradoxically, gives freedom because they no longer depend on circumstances to feel at peace. Those who trust themselves understand that peace is not found in still waters, but in learning how to stay still amidst the storm. They embrace imperfection because they know it is part of growth. They embrace uncertainty because they know it is the arena of possibility. They embrace solitude because they know it is the birthplace of wisdom. Through this, they begin to live guided not by fear but by principle. They stop chasing happiness and start creating meaning. They stop seeking shortcuts and start mastering the long game, the art of becoming unshakable. But there is one final transformation that awaits those who walk this path, a shift so profound that it changes not just how they see themselves, but how they experience the entire world. What is this ultimate state of self-trust that Machiavelli hinted at, but few ever reach? There comes a moment after countless doubts, failures, and awakenings when something shifts quietly inside a person. They no longer ask for signs. They no longer chase approval. They simply act not out of arrogance but from an unshakable knowing that whatever happens, they will find a way. That moment is the birth of true self-trust, the highest form of inner power that Machiavelli described as the essence of greatness. To Machiavelli, the individual who trusts himself becomes untouchable, not because fortune spares him, but because he learns to use both fortune and misfortune as tools for growth. He becomes, as Machiavelli would say, master of his own arms, not weapons of war, but the arms of will, reason, and self-discipline. This mastery creates a rare calm, the calm of someone who no longer battles life but navigates it. It makes a person magnetic and compelling. People sense that nothing external can move them too far from their center. It is the presence of a mind that has learned to rule itself. This is the final revelation Machiavelli leaves us with. The most powerful trait of those who truly trust themselves is self-governance, not dominance over others, but command over their own impulses, emotions, and fears. Because when people govern themselves, no one else can govern them. Machiavelli's philosophy was never about cruelty or manipulation as many believe. Beneath his sharp observations lies a profound psychological truth. The world belongs to those who understand human nature, starting with their own. He saw that power begins not in conquest but in clarity, not in domination but in self-discipline. When he wrote that fortune favors the bold, he was not glorifying recklessness. He was reminding us that boldness is born from preparation, from inner conviction. What would life look like if a person trusted themselves completely? If they stopped seeking reassurance, stopped doubting their instincts, stopped apologizing for wanting more? What if they acted every day with the quiet certainty that no matter what comes, they will adapt, learn, and rise? That is not fantasy, it is a choice, a practice. It begins in the smallest moments, saying what they believe even when their voice trembles, taking one step toward their vision even when no one else sees it, forgiving themselves when they fall and trying again with wiser eyes. Those moments, repeated over time, carve the foundation of a soul that stands unshaken. That is the legacy of the self-trusting individual, not perfection, but power born from authenticity. Machiavelli believed that fortune was like a river that floods and destroys those who are unprepared, but empowers those who build channels to direct it. Self-trust is that channel. It does not stop life's floods, but gives them shape. It turns chaos into motion, resistance into resilience, and uncertainty into opportunity. When a person reaches that state, when their inner voice becomes stronger than the noise of the world, something extraordinary happens. They no longer chase destiny, they create it. They no longer live for approval, they live for alignment. They no longer seek to control others, they master themselves. Through that, life begins to flow with them instead of against them. That is the freedom Machiavelli spoke of, not freedom from challenge but freedom through self-command. It is the art of being unmoved by both praise and blame, to act with integrity even when unseen, and to know that value does not rise or fall with fortune's tides. The world will test everyone. Fortune will shift. People will misunderstand. But none of that can truly touch those who remain faithful to their own truth. Because those who truly trust themselves are never defeated. They may fall, but they rise again, wiser and stronger. They may lose, but they never lose themselves. The question remains, in a world that constantly demands external validation, will you have the courage to trust the voice within? The journey of self-trust awaits, and with it, a power few ever discover but all can claim.